The U.S. Veterans Administration has launched not one, but two federal probes and already announced sweeping changes in response to a 4-month national investigation that we haven't even aired yet. At issue, a new scandal at the VA. The agency's headquarters announced the twin investigations after a team of our investigative reporters at the Scripps Washington Bureau and WCPO Insider met with top VA officials about our upcoming report. Scripps national investigative correspondent Mark Greenblatt has details from Washington on the fallout that's already coming from the soon-to-air investigation.
This senior official at a VA hospital didn't exactly welcome our questions.
Now, do you have anything to tell us?
But back at the agency's headquarters in Washington, they're taking an upcoming Scripps national investigation so seriously, officials already removed authority from Jack Hetrick, a high-ranking VA network director who for now will no longer oversee the Cincinnati VA Medical Center. Instead, the hospital that serves more than 40,000 veterans in Ohio will report into VA executives in Pittsburgh to ensure no conflict of interest while twin federal investigations get going. The sudden shakeup comes just days after we met with top agency officials and told them about issues raised by dozens of whistleblowers, concerns about the quality of care for veterans, and the alleged unethical practices involving senior leaders and their family. What we found already has the chairman of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs calling for better oversight of local VA leaders.
If, in fact, this is true, I would hope that the Secretary would take it seriously, because if he doesn't, we'll examine it from the committee's standpoint.
The VA also issued a statement in advance of the Scripps investigation saying, "We will investigate these allegations and, if substantiated, hold anyone accountable as appropriate based on facts and evidence. It is simply the right thing to do for our veterans and our hardworking, dedicated employees there."
Now, the VA initially announced an internal investigation, but we continue to ask questions, and the agency went on to ask for an independent look from its Inspector General. Now, you should also know that a family member of VA Executive Jack Hetrick has threatened to sue us if we told you about some of these allegations. We're in the process of confirming final facts and figures before we issue our report. Mark Greenblatt for the Scripps National Bureau in Washington.
Right now on WCPO.com and our mobile app, the inside story on how the Scripps investigation into the Veterans Administration began and the threats made in an attempt to stop our digging for the truth.
Thanks, Anu. Dozens of whistleblowers are coming forward alleging widespread problems from inside the Cincinnati VA Medical Center, putting veterans at risk.
Today, twin federal investigations are underway in response to a 4-month joint investigation from our Scripps Washington Bureau and WCPO.
And National Investigative Correspondent Mark Greenblatt has also uncovered evidence of serious conflicts of interest involving leadership. He has the latest from Washington.
I've been going to the VA hospital for a good 30 years.
Vietnam veteran Ted Dickey has long counted on the VA in Cincinnati for all of his care.
I have a rapport with a lot of people at the VA hospital.
But when he needed his second hip replacement, the VA didn't have a surgeon and referred him outside.
Their way of running the hospital is not doing surgery and farming it out.
34 whistleblowers in all, including 18 doctors, say veterans are getting shortchanged, even put at risk.
Many services are been devastated and are incapable of carrying out their necessary functions.
Longtime surgeon Richard Freiberg joins other whistleblowers who say many problems began when acting chief of staff Barbara Temek came on board 2.5 years ago and went right to work cutting costs and, some say, cutting corners.
There's unrest throughout the hospital.
He says Temek got rid of every specialist in total joint replacements, and the VA confirms it's now left with just an orthopedic surgeon who can perform non-complex knee replacements. No one here can do shoulders or hips.
She pushed them out. They've all left.
Freiberg still volunteers at the VA.
I've seen surgical instruments that once we open that sterile pack, they will have
pieces of bone or other debris from previous surgeries still on the instrumentation.
Mike Brooks is a 20-year Navy veteran and has worked here as a nurse anesthetist since 2008. He and others have witnessed recurring problems during surgery and say Dr. Tomek has failed to invest the resources to correct the problems.
It's the microscopic things that we can't see. That's what's the potential infectious problem for that poor patient on the table.
And in fact, we found under Tomek's tenure, the rate of drug-resistant MRSA infections has increased substantially, turning Cincinnati into one of the worst-performing VA hospitals in the nation.
Nurses and technicians will come to me and say, you know, I just feel terrible about this. They'll fill out the proper forms to get things corrected, but the forms don't seem to go anywhere.
But while whistleblowers criticize Tomek's cost-cutting measures, they also have concerns about her pay.
It's certainly common knowledge at the hospital that she's gaming the system.
Tomek earns $137,000 for her management position, but she's also paid as a cardiothoracic surgeon, getting $194,000 in pay for that. But what's at issue?
She's in the room when surgeries happen, but I can't say that I've ever seen her pick up a scalpel.
Multiple sources tell us Tomek serves only as an assistant and has never worked as the operating surgeon since arriving in Cincinnati. So who oversees her? At a regional level, that would be Network Director Jack Hetrick. Turns out Hetrick and Tomek go back more than a decade, where they worked together in Hines, Illinois. Records we've obtained show Tomek wrote a prescription for 50 pills of a generic form of Valium back in 2012 for Hetrick's wife. In May of 2013, just 8 weeks before Tomek landed the Cincinnati job, she gave Mrs. Hetrick another prescription for 100 pills of hydrocodone, an opioid classified as a controlled substance by the DEA. Each time, Tomek used her authority from an address linked to the VA back in Illinois. The problem? Illinois regulators say her controlled substance license expired back in 2011.
Was the person allowed to receive the prescription? From what I can gather, they were not.
Representative Jeff Miller of Florida chairs the House Committee on Veterans Affairs.
I believe that it needs to be fully investigated.
Dr. Tomek, Mark Greenblatt, I'm with Scripps News. We've been trying to talk to you.
Tomek declined repeated interview requests, so we caught up with her on our way into work.
We understand that you've written controlled substances for Jack Hetrick's wife. Can you tell us anything about why you did that?
Now, when we asked Hetrick about the prescriptions, he walked out of an interview. But just days after we met with officials at VA headquarters, the agency launched an internal investigation and called for a second Inspector General investigation. The VA also removed Hetrick from all oversight of the Cincinnati hospital pending the outcome of those investigations. Mark Greenblatt, Scripps News in Washington.
Mark, thank you. For more on our investigation and to access in-depth documents and interviews, you can go to our website, WXYZ.com.
All right, in response to the VA's national wait time scandal, Congress created the Choice Program to help veterans get the care they need sooner.
The Scripps Washington Bureau and our partners at WCPO have heard from 34 whistleblowers inside the Cincinnati VA who paint a picture of a hospital in disorder with important departments getting slashed and reduced care for our vets. Here's National Investigative Correspondent Mark Greenblatt with Veterans Care Dereliction of Duty.
I was in Vietnam 13 months and a day, I think.
That's Bill Hatfield, lifting 200-pound artillery shells, inflicting long-term damage on his body.
It makes my back hurt just to think about it.
Decades later, when this veteran needed relief from severe back pain, the Cincinnati VA told him,
"We don't have a neurosurgeon here at the hospital anymore." I couldn't believe it.
So the VA sent Hatfield for private care through Veterans Choice, a new $10 billion program intended to solve the national VA wait time scandal. To qualify, vets must live more than 40 miles away from a VA hospital or have waited longer than 30 days for an appointment. But Hatfield says Choice didn't live up to its name.
I was very, very naive because I thought it meant that I had a choice.
You wanted to go to a specific place that did have neurosurgeons.
Yes. But instead was sent to a place that didn't have one.
And that was just one of at least 30 times Hatfield was bounced back and forth in phone calls and visits over 19 months between the VA, the choice program, the clinic he wanted, and the clinic they sent him to.
This is crazy.
And vets across the nation had similar experiences, with pleas for help coming from Colorado Springs, Maine, Tampa, all documenting how vets in the choice program still experience long wait times and problems securing appointments. But whistleblowers say it's intentional, with some local VA hospital leaders looking to choice dollars as an incentive to make their own books look good, reducing staff, even eliminating costly medical services, and forcing vets into the choice program.
The funding comes from a different pot of money, so the administration doesn't view it as a cost to our VA.
Susan Ware has worked for 16 years in neurosurgery and is one of 34 whistleblowers we heard from at the Cincinnati VA. She says Dr. Barbara Tomek, the acting chief of staff, began to squeeze employees out from neurosurgery.
Before Dr. Tomek came in neurosurgery, we didn't have a backlog of problems with appointments.
But Ware says in 2014, Tomek began looking at closing neurosurgery and requested a cost-benefit analysis. And we uncovered internal documents which reveal annually it would have cost taxpayers $1.6 million to keep neurosurgery in-house and an additional $4 to $7 million to send patients outside the VA. But emails we've obtained show the hospital faced a potential large budget deficit. And in February of 2015, staff was told by Regional Director Jack Hetrick to find ways to improve operations and efficiency. And he said the status quo is not an option. 2 months after that email, Ware says Tomek
called an emergency meeting at 7:30 at night with the surgeons, and according to what I was told, she closed the service.
And whistleblowers say other services were hit too.
I think this is shift of expense, making the local institution look good.
Former Chief of Orthopedics Richard Freiberg says Tomek targeted all of the hospital's surgical specialists in hip, shoulder, and knee replacements.
We were told that we were going to be reduced to one full-time between the three of us.
And we confirmed last year just 54 hip, shoulder, and knee replacements took place in the hospital, with 769 orthopedic referrals to choice. Dr. Tomek declined to comment. Regional Director Jack Hetrick would only speak to us off camera.
If someone doesn't receive neurosurgery at the Cincinnati VA, where the Cincinnati VA was paying for it previously, now they can go to choice and another pot of cash would pay for it.
I guess you can look at it that way, sure.
Under your leadership then, is there a pattern and practice of not filling positions so that veterans go into the choice program?
Absolutely not.
What I don't want to see is that we're using choice dollars to help balance the budget for a particular medical center.
Representative Jeff Miller of Florida chairs the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. He's a big supporter of choice to reduce wait times, but not like this.
The choice program was supposed to be a supplement, not to supplant care.
I just feel disappointed.
Bill Hatfield looks to the VA's promise to those who served.
If the government says they're going to take care of their veterans, well, they should do it.
Sources from the House Committee on Veterans Affairs confirm they have received complaints from employees at VA hospitals in other states who think a cost shift to choice is also occurring there. Staff has not substantiated those allegations, but they are investigating. Mark Greenblatt, Scripps News in Washington.
Tough questions for the head of Veterans Affairs today about allegations of wrongdoing at the Cincinnati VA. Senators gave Bob McDonald a grilling, talking about alleged problems there discovered in a Night on Your Side I-Team and Scripps Washington Bureau report. National investigative correspondent Mark Greenblatt has the new promises from Ohio senators.
Nepotism, lack of cleanliness, mismanagement, staffing shortages, fear of whistleblower retaliation.
Senators from the Veterans Affairs Committee took turns telling VA Secretary Bob McDonald they're concerned about the widespread problems at the Cincinnati VA detailed in our investigation, which prompted the VA to look closer itself.
We immediately sent the Office of Medical Inspection to Cincinnati. We do have a preliminary report from them.
The Secretary didn't share the results with the committee, but did say the insiders who spoke out are safe.
Anybody who retaliates against a whistleblower will be held accountable
At the center of many new allegations, Dr. Barbara Tomek, acting chief of staff. Whistleblowers say she intentionally cut services veterans depend on, like Bill Hatfield, who needed back surgery, but the VA told him,
"We don't have a neurosurgeon here at the hospital anymore."
Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown announced a new commitment from the secretary.
I'm hopeful in a very short period of time that Secretary McDonald and I will together visit the VA in Cincinnati.
After the hearing,
I'm Mr. Secretary, Mark Greenblatt with Scripps News.
We followed up about the VA's investigation.
We take these allegations very seriously, and that's why we're digging into them.
Deputy Secretary Gibson said yesterday in a reporter's call that after a few days on the ground, OMI investigators, quote unquote, saw something which led them to then want to call in, led you to want to call in the IG. What is it?
It's not appropriate for me to tell you what that is.
So now it's a waiting game, leaving whistleblowers on edge and veterans continuing to question cuts in care. Mark Greenblatt, Scripps News on Capitol Hill.
Two big changes at the Cincinnati VA thanks to a 9 on Your Side I-Team and DC Scripps Bureau investigation.
Scripps national investigative reporter Mark Greenblatt shows us why those leaders are in trouble.
The highest-ranking VA official in Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana is packing his bags. Jack Hetrick is out as network director after the VA headquarters in Washington announced it substantiated misconduct allegations against both him and the Cincinnati VA's acting chief of staff, Dr. Barbara Tomek. The VA suspended her medical privileges and transferred Tomek to another role pending potential further discipline, where she could even face criminal charges. The VA announced the moves following preliminary results of an internal probe it launched in response to a joint investigation by the Scripps Washington Bureau and WCPO. Our reporting revealed widespread problems and allegations from dozens of insiders concerned about care for veterans under Tomek's leadership.
Dr. Tomek, Mark Greenblatt, I'm with Scripps News. We've been trying to talk to you.
And we discovered improper prescriptions, she wrote.
We understand that you've written controlled substances for Jack Hetrick's wife. Can you tell us anything about why you did that?
Records we obtained showed Tomek wrote a prescription for 50 pills of a generic form of Valium back in 2012 for Hetrick's wife. In May of 2013, just 8 weeks before Tomek landed the Cincinnati job, she gave Mrs. Hetrick another prescription, this time for 100 pills of hydrocodone, an opioid classified as a controlled substance by the DEA. The problem? Illinois regulators say her controlled substance license expired back in 2011. Our reporting got the attention of the chairman of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs.
Was the person allowed to receive the prescription? From what I can gather, they were not.
On Tuesday, senators took turns questioning the VA's secretary about it all.
Nepotism, lack of cleanliness, mismanagement.
And on Wednesday, even President Obama's press secretary weighed in.
This is a situation that the White House is aware of.
The VA served notice to remove Hetrick from his position. He responded by announcing a sudden retirement.
9 on Your Side and Scripps are committed to staying on top of the changes at the VA. On WCPO.com, you can read more about what's happening to Tomek and to Hetrick and all of our joint investigations into the VA. Getting answers from the top. In just an hour, Tri-State veterans will be able to ask the new regional director about quality of care. This comes after a months-long 9 on Your Side I-Team and Scripps Washington, D.C. Bureau investigation led to problems at the VA hospital here. Evan Millward is live in Sharonville, where a forum will begin in just 1 hour. Evan?
Well, Carol, folks are just starting to trickle in here for a rare opportunity. A handful of our whistleblowers sitting side by side with a top VA executive, continuing to demand answers after our reports launched 2 investigations and found care curbed.
Many services have been devastated and are incapable of carrying out their necessary functions.
Story after story.
Their way of running the hospital is not doing the surgery and farming it out.
34 whistleblowers told us the Cincinnati VA was cutting corners. Specialists gone.
She pushed them out. They've all left.
Allegedly as part of a Veterans Choice program, whistleblowers say it was really to cut budgets. And MRSA rates here among the worst in the country.
Bone or other debris from previous surgeries still on the instrumentation.
Our whistleblowers blaming Cincy VA Acting Chief Barbara Tomek. And then we uncovered allegations she was writing prescriptions for her boss's wife.
Dr. Tomek, Mark Greenblatt, I'm with Scripps News. We've been trying to talk to you.
Our reporting led to attention in Washington.
Nepotism, lack of cleanliness, mismanagement.
And then led the agency to revoke Tomek's medical privileges. Her boss, Regional Director Jack Hetrick, retired before he could be fired. The new regional boss, Robert McDivitt, will be sitting here tonight on the same stage as 3 of our whistleblowers and just feet from veterans, now with unprecedented access to answers. And by the way, Barbara Tomek still works at the Cincinnati VA. We're told she's still being paid upwards of $300,000. Our town hall starts here at 7 o'clock. If you can't make it to Sharonville, we're going to stream it for you live over on WCPO.com. We are live in Sharonville tonight. I'm Evan Millward, 9 on your side.
Cincinnati VA Hospital likely put veterans' care at risk. It's an issue exposed by the 9 on Your Side I-Team and Scripps DC Bureau. And tonight, we wanted to make sure veterans got the answers and guidance they deserved, straight from leaders and the whistleblowers who brought the issues to light. 9 on Your Side's Evan Millward was there as well and explains the changes that are coming.
Well, the big news that came out of our town hall was that the acting regional director for the VA says there will be management changes here in the next couple of months. They've already interviewed people for the chief of staff job. That post relinquished by Barbara Tomek after our reports exposed cost cutting, a dereliction of duty on Vine Street. At a VFW post in Sharonville Wednesday,
how can us disabled vets trust the VA?
The question of trust.
There's a culture that if you point something out, you become the problem.
Whistleblowers sit side by side with a VA executive. Robert McDivitt has only been in this role 1 month.
We are an open, transparent agency.
This is a baptism by fire.
The question is, why do I have to wait? Why is it taking so long?
Robert Mall is a 21-year Army veteran.
You're going to have to see the doctor again. So here we go back around full circle again. And in the meantime, sometimes I can't get out of bed in the morning. It hurts so bad.
Mull says he does trust the VA, but he wants to see a change. So does Susan Ware, a neurosurgery nurse practitioner.
It broke my heart, and I decided, well, if I'm retaliated against, I can always get another job, but I can't get another conscience.
And it all comes back to trust.
What is it that you can do to go forward to try to restore that trust?
Sure. I think the discussion we're having tonight is part of that.
All of the veterans and the whistleblowers at our town hall said they came forward and they shared their stories because they want to trust the VA and know that there will be accountability here. In Clifton, I'm Evan Millward, 9 on your side.
Evan, thank you. And the VA says it will prioritize reaching out to those veterans. And if you have any questions, concerns, or even need help with the VA, 9 is on your side. Be sure to head over to WCPO.com/VA help to make your voice heard. Share that URL, that link, with your friends and veterans you know as well. And we will continue to stay on top of this story. Tonight, new information about problems at the Cincinnati VA. Surgical instruments with blood or bone and a needle holder with a used needle still in it. The 9 on Your Side I-Team and Scripps DC Bureau, well, they have spent months digging into allegations of wrongdoing, taking our concerns straight to the top. And Scripps National Investigative Correspondent Mark Greenblatt uncovers internal VA documents that show those alarming allegations and so much more.
I'm the one who filled out the report. Where did those reports go?
This surgical technician is speaking out publicly for the first time.
This is ridiculous.
Scott Landrum's talking about long-standing problems with dirty, risky surgical instruments at the Cincinnati VA hospital. Problems the VA says it cannot substantiate.
I'm the person who found the bone on the instruments, and it happened dozens of times. How in the world can someone say that it didn't happen? I did it.
The issues first came to light in a joint Scripps WCPO investigation this February when a nurse anesthetist told us this.
I've seen surgical instruments that once we open that sterile pack, they will have pieces of bone or other debris from previous surgeries still on the instrumentation.
And so the VA launched its own investigation, but within a few weeks announced the preliminary results, saying that it couldn't find any quality of care problems. But internal documents that we've obtained paint a more disturbing picture. Reports show in fiscal year 2015, in at least 16% of surgeries hospital-wide, unsterilized or otherwise problematic surgical items got sent to the OR. With more than 3,500 surgeries that year, that's 581 impacted. And here, the VA details hundreds of what it calls quality events, repeated instances of bone-contaminated drill bits, broken or rusty surgical instruments, holes in sterile wrappers, or the wrong instruments getting sent to the OR. In one case, a surgical pack was sent to the OR with the word dirty written right on it. That was one of 5 quality events reported the very day the VA sent out this press release saying it found no quality of care issues.
Well, it's typical VA.
Congressman Jeff Miller chairs the House Veterans Affairs Committee and doesn't buy the agency's claims.
I mean, they investigate themselves, they clear themselves, and they say, nothing to see here, we're going to move along.
They need to find out who's covering it up.
Dr. Jonathan Wolf is the former chief resident of the Cincinnati VA, and he says he tried to get leadership's attention to the problem as far back as 2013.
We also saw instances where there was bone in orthopedic reamers.
So this was pieces of bone from someone else's body that could end up in your body.
Oh, exactly, yeah, and you could end up with bone that could potentially be contaminated with some sort of infectious disease.
But when this Harvard-trained surgeon reported what he saw, time and again,
I heard nothing. I mean, I filed anywhere between, 10 and 12 of these incident reports, I believe, and I never heard back about a single one.
Years later, internal documents reveal problems persist, with at least 11 cases from fiscal year 2015 where instruments showed up with suspected biological debris like blood or bones left on the instruments. Earlier this year, an internal panel warned the committee believes staff is not reporting all issues. And when it is reported,
where are all the reports that were filed that were supposed to go to the VISN? Where are they?
Scott Landrum pressed Robert McDivitt, acting network director of the VA's VISN 10 region, who oversees all hospitals in Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana.
We are an open, transparent agency, and we were here tonight to listen to you and hear your concerns. I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards.
2 days later, the local VA did talk to Landrum and said it planned to fire him.
Scott Landrum says that he left the VA voluntarily for what he calls a better job. As for Dr. Wolf's reports, well, the VA says they were filed with an operating room manager before he left in 2014, but they admit that they never got entered into a patient tracking system. Mark Greenblatt for Scripps News in Washington.
Now, our investigation does not end here, folks. You can go through the VA's internal documents right now and read more on our report on WCPO.com.